Hello and welcome back to another random Wednesday upload this June, where, as you can tell by the title and the length of the video, I decided to edit together all of my reviews for the Russell T Davies era of the revival show out of Doctor Who. So that's seasons 1 to 4 plus the 2009 specials. So with that being said, because I know I don't know how long this is going to be because I have yet to edit it together. Do enjoy, but I will say that for my review of Series 1 as well as Christmas Invasion, that they were scripted, so they're not like my videos for when I did 2 and onwards. So with that being said, I do hope that you enjoy this video, and if this does well, I might do the same for the Moffat era as well. So I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael and this is the first of the 2 secret projects that I am working on. As you can tell by the title, this one is Doctor Who related, where I am essentially going to be talking about why I think the first series of the revival of Doctor Who is a near perfect series. So with that being said, let's dive right into this video. So, the question you're asking is, well, 2 things. 1, how is this a near perfect series? And 2, what constitutes a not perfect series, a near perfect series, and a perfect series? Well, everyone has their own opinions on this, but here's my take on it. For me, a perfect series has to be one that has a few elements mainly. Good storytelling, good character development, and you love every episode. From start to finish, you love that show, you love that series. For a lot of people, that could be, the first few seasons of The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones. For me, that goes to Series 3 of The Orville, where for the past 10 weeks, I have loved every single episode of this show, of The Orville, since it came back after a 3-year hiatus. That to me is a perfect season or series, whatever way you want to call it. A near perfect series, which is Doctor Who Series 1 and Series 5, is there's a lot of good episodes in it, more than there are bad episodes. So, for example, out of the 13 episodes, I think it's safe to say 3 of them. So I love 10 out of the 13 episodes. So for that for me now classes this as a near perfect series. And what's something then that isn't what's a bad series? Doctor Who Flux. No, not Doctor Who Flux. I actually like Doctor Who Flux. We'll go with Doctor Who Series 11, where there's only maybe 1 or 2 episodes that I like, and I hate everything else about it. So that would be something I would class as a bad series. So now that we have the how and what constitutes a bad, near perfect, and perfect series, let's actually start getting into this review, where I'm going to briefly be talking about and reviewing all 13 episodes of Series 1. So now it's time for this video to kick off properly. So, this episode is a good introduction to Doctor Who, as for the most part we follow the new companion Rose, by Billie Piper, and through her we are slowly introduced to the world of Doctor Who, as we meet the Doctor on 3 separate occasions. The first time is when he saves Rose from the Autons, and we see his witty side slowly creep through. It's not until the second time that they meet, this time at Rose's apartment, that her worldview is slowly opened up to the point where she tries to find out more about the Doctor, bringing it to the third time that she meets the Doctor when Plastic Mickey brings Rose out for a meal. When they find where the nesting conscience is, Rose saves the Doctor, which then proves to him that she's worth having as a companion. So my thoughts on this episode is it's a good one. I enjoyed it when I first watched it as a kid and when I rewatched it for this one. I don't like the end of time after rewatching it on the Blu-ray. I really don't. My God, did they make it worse. The new CG looks good for the establishing shot of the platform, but in other places it just looks terrible. Especially with certain scenes that they've upped the contrast, which really takes away from the episode. Apart from this, the story is an okay one, if not a tad bit predictable on who is the main villain. And the new CGI for Cassandra is alright, I guess. I'd honestly rather take the original 2005 version than this shitty CGI remake. So, episode 3 is an episode that I'm neutral with. I don't mind it, but it will more than likely be skipped during my next rewatch. I mean, the story is okay at best, and it's nothing really groundbreaking. And the only two important things to come out of this episode is Gwen's relative, as well as the rift in time and space. This is an episode that you probably only need to see once, and that's that. Now here's where I'm going to get slightly controversial with my opinions for episodes 4 and 5. That is, I actually love Aliens of London and World War III. Do I see where this episode gets hate? Kind of. I get the farting aliens bit does get a bit annoying at times, but besides that small thing, I don't have any issues with this two-parter. It's a good two-parter. Aliens of London being the better of the two parts. I mean, just how it ended with each main character having to deal with a different member of the Sladine family. And just it leaving off on the cliffhanger after, bringing in unit of sorts and then immediately killing those unit officers off in the next episode. I especially love the Sladine design. As comparing it to the villains from episodes 1 to 3, it's the best design that we've got compared to, plastic, a bitchy trampoline, and gas. The Sladine were really menacing to me as a kid. So as I stated in the beginning of this episode, one of the main reasons why I love these two stories is simply because these, plus the next episode, were ones I would watch religiously after getting into Doctor Who, as it was the only bit of Doctor Who media that I had until Series 2 came back. So yeah, because I watched these episodes over and over and over and over and over and over again, I fell in love with them. So yes, I am kind of looking back at this with rose-tinted glasses, but I don't care. I absolutely love these two episodes. Now, episode 6 is peak Doctor Who, and I'm talking about the first Dalek story and the revival of Doctor Who, as it still holds up 17 years later, and it grips you in from start to finish. My God, is it a masterpiece of an episode. This is where we see the fall out from the Time War, with the last of the Time Lords versus the last of the Daleks, and my God, was it a perfect introduction for me to the Daleks when I was a kid. And the Doctor in this episode, my God, is Christopher Eccleston amazing in this episode. There's nothing bad I can say about it. It's that good. And fun fact, this episode is based off of the Big Finish audio with the Sixth Doctor called Jubilee. And Dalek was written by the same writer who wrote Jubilee. I highly recommend you give it a listen. Episode 7 is a shit episode, and it's so terrible that I will not be talking about it, and I will never watch it again, and will always be skipped on my watch-throughs. That is all, no questions. Moving on. I feel like Father's Day is a really underrated episode, as it gives a lot of character development to Rose, Jackie, and even Rose's father, Pete, as this was the episode that introduced him, as well as showing how he died. I mean, Doctor Who did try to do a similar thing with Jodie Whittaker's era in her first series with Demons of the Punjab, but that episode failed miserably to me. But I'm not going to be going into that too much because I've already talked enough about Jodie Whittaker's era on this channel before. Just not gonna. This episode also introduces us to the Reapers, which had an amazing design, and it's such a shame that we never got to see him after this episode. I really wish they'd bring him back. The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances they're both amazing episodes. The Empty Child being the better of the two, but that Everybody Lives line is just amazing. I won't be talking about it too much, simply because this episode, or these episodes I should say, have been discussed to death by everyone already. So I don't have anything interesting to say about them other than it didn't really scare me as a kid when I watched them. Boomtown is another one of those underrated episodes, as it's a sequel to Aliens in London and World War III, which then wraps it up in a nice, neat bow at the end of the episode. It's also here where Rose becomes sort of a bitch that we see in Series 2, and how she treats Mickey, with Rose getting upset that Mickey's seeing someone else, when literally the episode before, she was flirting with Captain Jack. This episode also somewhat continues the rift, as well as introducing an idea being that the TARDIS can stop here at the rift and fuel up, which won't be brought up again until the Series 3 finale, three-parter. It also just occurred to me that at this point in the episode, there's two Jacks running around. The Jack that we know from The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, that's still, new and fresh to traveling with the Doctor and hasn't become an immortal yet. And then the Jack that we know of after the fact. And it just occurred to me as well, I wonder what would have happened if Jack ran into Jack. They'd probably fuck themselves. I guess that brings a new meaning to go fuck yourself with them. I also love the conversation the Doctor has with this lady, and I've already forgotten her name. I think it was Margaret or something. I can't remember. But I just love how she's trying to, try and convince the Doctor to, not bring her back to Raxacora Go Falbatorius. I'm surprised I actually managed to get that without screwing up. And also trying to kill the Doctor as well. But of course, the Doctor being 10 steps ahead of her. I especially love when she tries to, extrude the gas and the Doctor just gets her in the mouth with that spray. That really stuck out to me as a kid, and I still find funny now. And lastly is The Parting of Ways and Bad Wolf. What more can I add to what has already been said at this point? It's a near perfect end to Series 1, wrapping up everything from this series. The Doctor's reaction to Rose's supposed death, the reveal that it's the Daleks all along, and how the Doctor sends Rose back to Earth, which the Doctor would do again for different companions. And then Rose coming in with the save and the first on-screen regeneration since the TV movie. Everything about it is just perfect, and it's at least the top 3 modern Dalek stories. I honestly had so much fun rewatching Series 1, as well as reliving my childhood through this, because as I'm watching it, it's bringing back all these fond memories that I had growing up, especially Christmas of 2006, where my entire sit room over at the fireplace was decked out as all hell with all things Doctor Who. I mean, I even had a TARDIS wardrobe that I actually used to store my toys in, and stopped going in after I saw a spider in there one time. I wish I was joking. I do not like spiders. And it's just, I also even had the Cyberman voice changer helmet, which never really worked for me. I could get it to say the few phrases that were built in, but actually having my voice be changed into a Cyberman whilst wearing it, no, never happened. And I'll always look back on those memories with fondness. Hello, and welcome back to another brand new video, and a very Merry Christmas to all who are watching this. So, yes, just like last year, I am reviewing another Doctor Who Christmas special, the first of the modern era to be precise. So yeah, I am reviewing the Christmas Invasion, as it has a bit of sentimentality to me. With that being said, let's jump into this review. So let's talk about what happened in this episode. Well, it takes place right after the end of season 1, with a brand new incarnation of the Doctor bringing Rose home for Christmas. And after they land, or rather crash land, the Doctor passes out and is brought into the Tyler household. Jackie has a lot of questions for Rose, as she's the only one with answers as to what happened to the Doctor and why his face has changed. But Rose is limited with her answers, so she can only give as much as she can, as she doesn't fully understand what's happened. Mickey brings Rose out to do a bit of Christmas shopping to help distract her from worrying about the Doctor, but just like in Boomtown, she can't stop talking about him, which upsets Mickey. But before they can get any shopping done, they are attacked by robot Santas, who are after not only them, but mainly the Doctor, as while he is bedridden, he is leaking regeneration energy out of his mouth. So while this is happening, the UK government has sent a probe out into space, directly towards Mars, to get some images from the planet. But it is intercepted by the aliens of this episode, the Sycorax, and they make their way back to Earth. Back at the Tylers, Rose notices a brand new Christmas tree that wasn't there when she originally left. This tree then comes to life and tries to kill them, locking them in Jackie's bedroom, to which Rose immediately goes to the Doctor, says, "Help me," and he immediately springs out of the bed and destroys the tree. But they woke him up way too soon. The Sycorax have made themselves known to the entire planet of Earth, and UNIT gets involved. I use quotes there because it's not specifically mentioned that it's UNIT, but judging by the uniform, it can be said that it's UNIT. But the Major, who is only referred to as the Major, doesn't get a first name, gets murked off, as well as somebody else. This happens after they are brought aboard the ship, after the Sycorax is controlling 1/3 of the population with a form of blood control. So whilst Harriet is trying to negotiate with the Sycorax, Rose brings the Doctor on to the TARDIS, and it's whilst there that she tries to listen in to what's happening on the alien ship. This tips them off to the existence of the TARDIS, and they bring the TARDIS on board. Mickey and Rose then step out. So after Mickey spills some tea in the TARDIS, it somehow helps the Doctor and wakes him up, and he quickly gets to work by proving that the blood control is just a cheap bit of voodoo, and challenges the leader of the Sycorax ship battle for the planet. It's during this battle that the Doctor loses his hand, and you'd think there would be a bit of blood and, the Doctor showing that he's in pain, but I guess RTD, or rather the BBC, didn't want to show that on Christmas, or at all. Anyways, it's here that we learn some new information about when a Time Lord regenerates, that if he gets injured, minus losing a head, as I'm sure that will still kill them, that within the first 15 hours or so of regeneration, there's still enough energy to grow back that missing limb, or heal the said Time Lord. And so the Doctor gets a new hand, but what happened to the old hand? Well, that comes up at some point in the future. Also in this episode that we see the early stages of the Time Lord victorious, or at least that's what I noticed when I rewatched this episode. When after sparing the Sycorax leader from a defeat, the Sycorax leader goes to attack the Doctor from behind. The Doctor then reaches for a Satsuma and throws it at a pod on the door, which then gives way to a bit of land, causing the Sycorax leader to fall to his death. And as the Doctor quotes, "No second chances. I'm that sort of a man." He then also does this later on when Harriet Jones orders Torchwood to destroy the Sycorax ship, and he then brings Harriet down, or Harriet and her government down, with just 6 words. And the episode ends with Rose, Mickey, and Jackie and the Doctor all having a Christmas dinner. With after the dinner, the Doctor and Rose mosey on into the TARDIS, and go off on many adventures. This episode holds a lot of sentimental feelings for me. As I mentioned before in different videos and maybe a few live streams, that this is the first full episode of Doctor Who I watched to get me into the show. As before, I had only seen bits and pieces of different episodes, and I can remember it well. I was sitting on my beanbag playing with my new Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Disc, the Seal of Orichalcos Dual Disc for those who are going to ask, playing with my cards when it came on, and my mother had fallen asleep from probably being up early that day, as well as probably after the dinner we had at my granny's. I can't describe what it was with this episode that hooked me on to Doctor Who. Maybe it was Billy Piper or David Tennant, or the fact that it had a good story for being so Doctor Light. Who knows? But even after all these years, it still holds a special place in my heart, and the memories attached to it I'll never forget. Like how I'll never forget the first bit of Star Trek I was shown as a kid was Star Trek Nemesis back in 2002. Now, I'm going to have to take off my rose-tinted glasses for this because for the vast majority of this review, I have had them on. And, yeah, from this point on, they have been taken off. So, this episode is a really great Christmas story. Especially, this is a really great first modern Christmas special for Doctor Who, and I can see why a lot of people love it. I mean, I do too, but it's not my absolute favorite. As well as I can see why it's jumping on point for some fans, because this is how I got into the show. It was this episode that kickstarted my love for this series, as it's a very Doctor-like episode, and we don't get many of those. As well as it doesn't really focus on the fact that the Doctor has changed. Yes, it is brought up a good few times, but it's not the main focus of this story. Billy Piper is, of course, on point as Rose. This is the end of my liking to Rose, as with Series 2, over the years I've grown to have a bit of a disdain for Rose Tyler. I will of course cover that when I go to do a mega review for Series 2 in the new year. As well as a first story, this is a fantastic episode for David Tennant as the Doctor. As even though he's not really in this episode as much, from when he does show up properly towards the end of the episode, he is fantastic. He immediately slips right into the role. Granted, that's probably because this episode might have been filmed at a different point, since all the episodes are shot out of order, but it's still a very good introduction to his Doctor. We also get to see the early seeds of how his Doctor will be in Series 2, and of course later on with the Time Lord Victorious, which slowly appears towards the end of this episode. Hello and welcome back to another brand new upload where, yes, it's another Doctor Who review. This time it's another mega review for the complete Series 2 of Modern Doctor Who. Now, expect a whole lot more Doctor Who content for the rest of this year, as you already know from last month, I reviewed the first ever anniversary special. Those are still coming out, as well as I'm going to catch up on all the other seasons that I have yet to review, starting with Series 2 and then ending with Series 10, because I've already done a Series 1 and a Series 11 to 13 review last year. So yeah, I'm also going to try and not script this. Scripted content just doesn't seem to do well really on this channel, so hopefully I don't ramble too much, because I tend to ramble a hell of a lot when it comes to my love of this show, so fingers crossed that I don't end up rambling. But yeah, so this is the first time I've actually sat down and rewatched Series 2 from start to finish since it aired back in 2006. There has been episodes from this season that I have obviously returned to, such as the Cybermen two-parter, the Impossible Planet and the Beast Below, which is a personal favorite of my of this season, and then of course Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, as well as I've returned to Love and Monsters, and the the episode before the series finale, which I am Fear Her. That's the name of it. Took me a while to remember it. So yeah, like there was two episodes in this season that I have not seen since it actually aired back in 2006. That being The Idiot's Lantern and Tooth and Claw. So yeah, I suppose I will start with the first episode, New Earth. Um, yeah, it has been a while since I've obviously rewatched New Earth. But it's okay. There's nothing bad about it. Nothing good. There's nothing great about it. It's just your average episode of the show. Cassandra was okay. The cat nurses were okay, and the resolution of this episode was okay, and that's about as much of New Earth that I can say really. And then of course now we're going into Tooth and Claw. Now, as I said, Tooth and Claw I have not seen since it aired back in 2006. When I was a bit more cowardly back then, where I couldn't, I didn't, I actually was covering my face with the wolf transformation, and yeah, I have quite a few things to say. Number one, the opening scene where the monks are fighting the people at Torchwood House. Over the top, way too many fast cuts. It was terrible. Yeah, that annoyed me a lot. And then of course the CG for the werewolf. Now, I should mention I'm not watching the Blu-ray version with up to date visuals and that. I'm actually watching the DVD version that came out and around the time of 2006. So it still has like the original visuals for how it was broadcast back in 2006. And yeah, in certain shots with the werewolf, it does hold up. Like it looks pretty good. And then there's other scenes where it just doesn't. Which, when we get onto the next episode, it's kind of annoying, but again, budget-wise, with giving how big the budget is, like how the budget was spent for other episodes compared to this one, I see why, and I understand why that the werewolf doesn't hold up as much, all these years later. But yeah, the other thing that really annoyed me during this episode was Rose constantly trying to get Queen Victoria to say, "I'm not amused." That joke got old really, really quickly, and it just did not like it whatsoever. So, Tooth and Claw, first time watching it since it aired. What did I think? Not great. It's not a great episode. It's definitely one now I probably won't be returning to for quite a while. And that's just the way it's going to be. I might even skip it on my next... I will be skipping it on my next rewatch, full rewatch. So yeah, now we move on to the next episode, which is School Reunion, where Mickey calls back the Doctor and Rose because there's something going on with the particular school where a new headmaster takes over. Half the staff are let go, including some dinner ladies, and test scores are through the roof. And this is also the first time a classic series companion has come back to the show. Well, the modern era of the show. That being, of course, Sarah Jane Smith, Elizabeth Sladen. And rewatching this episode, having not seen it in a number of years, I forgot how much I love Sarah Jane, and how even after all these years, Liz Sladen was able to slip back into that role rather seamlessly. I had no issues with her whatsoever, and it's a good story as a kind of focus point with the Doctor and Rose's relationship, and any relationships that the Doctor might have with companions, where he basically says, he doesn't age, he regenerates, whereas humans, they grow old, they wither away and die. And he can't stand that with the people he loves that he travels with. And yeah. The Krillitang, the CGI for the Krillitang holds up really, really well. I think the Krillitang are a very interesting species that unfortunately is just a one-off again for the show. I would love to see them come back in Modern Who, especially because with the lore behind the Krillitang is that every time they conquer a new species, they will take a part of that species that they like and admire and add it to their own. So it'd be interesting to see how much the Krillitang has evolved over the years. And yeah, I really do want to see them return at some point in the modern era of the show. So, one gripe that I do have with the end of this episode, and it's a gripe that I've always had with Rose, and that is how she treats Mickey in the end. Where Mickey Smith asks to finally join the TARDIS crew, and not be a side character, and actually, get to have adventures with the Doctor and Rose. And the Doctor, of course, is okay with it, but the way Rose acts is just irritating. It really is. It's why I just don't like Rose as much as I did as a kid. It's just the way she's like, oh yeah, it's fine, but in a real, I don't. It just annoys me. It just annoys me, and it annoys me even more that in the next episode, the girl in the fireplace, she's completely fine. She's completely happy to have him on board. It makes no sense to me. Like, she is the worst girlfriend in the show's history. I'm even going to say even worse than Amy Pond is. Like, Amy Pond, comparing Rose to Amy Pond and how Amy treated Rory is next to fucking nothing compared to how Rose treated Mickey throughout both Series 1 and Series 2, and then again in Series 4 when she gets her Meta-Crisis Doctor. It's really frustrating. So, speaking of the girl in the fireplace, this is a lot of people's favourite episode. And it's been quite a bit since I actually watched this episode, and I went in thinking that I wasn't going to like it as much, as I was going to call it overrated, this and that. But no, it's adequate. It's a really good episode. The story is pretty good, and it's one that I'd highly recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it. But I'm pretty sure everyone that watches this video has seen The Girl in the Fireplace, and it is one of their favorite episodes. Now moving on to the Cybermen two-parter. Another great episode, great two-part, great reintroduction to the Cybermen, and great new updated design. Because the Cybermen hasn't been seen, I think, since Silver Nemesis. Like, of course, we do get the helmet of a Cyberman in Dalek, but they haven't been seen since Silver Nemesis. And it's a great first outing for the Cybermen. Great story, having it set in a parallel world, on a parallel Earth. And but again, Rose really irritates me in this episode. Once she finds out that her father is alive, she instantly has to go see him, has to go try and push herself into their lives. She doesn't exist in this universe. Well, here she is. Let me go try and push my way into my dead father, who's still alive in this parallel universe's life. And I seen a TikTok today as I'm recording this on the 6th of January. Someone pointed something out something I hadn't noticed is Pete in this episode, Pete Tyler, is the exact same as he was character-wise as in Father Day, whereas Jackie in this episode, total 180, complete bitch of a character. And I hadn't noticed that. And yeah, thinking about it, after, watching those two episodes as well as the last two episodes of the season, yeah, he is one-to-one exactly alike as his character was portrayed in Father's Day. So yeah, now we get on to the latter half of the season. Okay, so the next episode after that is the Idiot's Lantern, and it's an episode that I haven't seen since it first aired, or I might have seen it once since its first airing. And sitting down to give it a watch, I knew it's it's an episode that I did not like before this rewatch, and even after this rewatch, I do. My opinion has changed on the episode somewhat, where it's slightly more bearable than what I remembered, but it's still not a great episode. It's definitely one of the more weaker episodes of this season. Rose is essentially taken out for half of it, and we get to see the Doctor again in pure rage, or as I've been essentially referred to it as the last time I brought up his rage. I'll be bringing it up after this. It's early stages of the Time Lord Victorious that I've noticed. The Doctor is very, very has a lot of rage, but it's in this incarnation particularly that we see the rage more and more, compared to, say, the Ninth Doctor, who definitely had rage. He was suffering from the Time Vortex, not the Time Vortex, the Time War, the ramifications of the Time War, but he could still have, it wasn't as prevalent in his series, whereas throughout David Tennant's run, the rage is there. It's constantly, I'm just after rewatching The Runaway Bride, and I'll be bringing it up in that video as well whenever I get around to covering it. But had Donna not stopped him, he would have continued the slaughter. He would have slaughtered the Queen of the Rakdos there and then, had Donna not stopped him, because he's vengeful. He as again, quoting other episodes in Angel Sect Manhattan, or one of the episodes, River says, someone says to the Doctor, never travel alone, because when he travels alone for so long, he gets vengeful. There's no one there to stop him, essentially. And it's definitely, without Rose in a lot of these episodes, when something happens to her, the Doctor gets vengeful. He doesn't have that thing there, that companion there to stop him from doing that. And that's why we see in The Waters of Mars what he did, because he'd been traveling alone for so long after Donna that he got vengeful. He essentially then fulfilled becoming the Time Lord Victorious, whereas in series 2 and series 3 and series 4, up until that point, there's the seeds that are being sown. And it's very interesting looking back on it, knowing what we do know about the Time Lord Victorious and how that came about. So yeah, Idiot Lantern, not the greatest. Now, the Satan Pit and the Beast Below has always been my favorite episode from this season. I don't know what it is about it. It's just the premise is, I love the premise of this two-parter. The fact that it's an impossible planet orbiting a black hole that should be dragged in and destroyed at this point. But no, apparently it's not. It's orbiting a black hole, and it has this funnel that can go all the way back to Earth. And that's how these humans got there. And then, of course, instantly take the TARDIS out of the equation until the end of the episode. Have the Doctor and Rose trapped in a base under siege story. It's fantastic. And the whole premise of the Beast is very interesting, and I wish they would have done more with that. But obviously they couldn't, because the planet went straight into the black hole, killing the Beast dead. And then the next episode after that, we get Love and Monsters. Now, this episode, as a lot of fans have put it, is not a great episode. And I'm not gonna lie, I've fucking gone around like a pendulum on how I feel about this episode. When I was a kid, I actually loved it. I thought it was really, really good. Then in my teenage years, I didn't. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was a really, really bad episode. And now, in my late 20s, because I'm a month away from being 25 by the time this comes out. Jesus Christ, I'm getting old. Uh, I don't mind it as much. I think it gets so much hate that it doesn't need. It's just a fun Doctor Light episode. I mean, there has been better Doctor Light episodes, um, but it's actually not that bad. Uh, I'd say if you don't like Love and Monsters, give it another go. Give it another watch through. You might change your mind. If you just go into it with an open mind of, ignoring the hatred, not the hatred, but the disdain for this episode that you might have, you might actually come out and actually enjoying it that bit more. But yeah, that's what I thought of the. I came out with that episode enjoying it that bit more than when I did in my teenage years. It's an alright episode. It's not great. It's not bad or anything. It's just average episode of Doctor Who. It's campy. It's silly. It's what Doctor Who is, and what Doctor Who has always been is a campy, silly show for kids. So yeah, that's what I think of Love and Monsters now after this episode. After this rewatch of Series 2. Now we get into Fear Her. I hate to be negative, but it's after two or three rewatches over the years, it's not great. It's bad. It should not have been greenlit. And I hate dogging on the kid actors because they're just kids. They don't have the necessary acting skills. But the actress who plays Chloe Weber, it's not great. She's not a good child actor, and I hate saying that because they're just kids. But yeah, it's not great. It's not a good episode. But one thing I always find funny is whilst that's taking place, who know, like, I don't know exactly, like, it's obviously taking place during the London 2012 Olympics, but at the same time, either at the same time or early on in the year 2012 or later on in the year 2012, the Doctor and Rose is in America dealing with the Dalek. So, because you remember Dalek from Series 1, that takes place in 2012. So does this episode. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But that now brings us on to Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. And it's a great send-off to the Rose character. It's really good. She gets a bit annoying at times throughout this episode, but it was, I remember as a kid, it being hyped up as this big monumentous event because it's the Cybermen that we see, for the vast majority of Army of Ghosts. And it's not until the end of the episode that the Daleks show up. And I remember as a kid not knowing that was going to happen. And I was fucking mind-blown that the Daleks are here. That it's now not only just the Cybermen, which was teased in the Next Time trailer at the end of Fear Her, but it's the Daleks. And now they're at war with each other in Doomsday. And the whole situation with the parallel world is back again, and we get to see Pete. We get to know that now this parallel world is far more advanced and compared to our universe. It's like 3 years into their future where it's still the same time for us. When they first crossed over, it was the February, so it's still in around the same time, just obviously several months later in our universe compared to the parallel universe. And what I love also about this episode is Mickey. Like, Mickey has gained so much confidence in this episode. Like, from his time being in the parallel world, stopping the Cybermen and all that. And it done his character well because he's always been not so much a coward, but a coward-like afterthought, And it's really nice to see how his character went in the episode, in this two parts that we do see in Series 4 when he does make a return, and again at the end of Time Part 2 when he's married to Martha. We get to see that, and so yeah, I honestly went in to rewatching this series too, thinking it's not going to hold up. It's not it's not as good as series one. You know, as I said, series one is a near perfect season, and even after this rewatch, season two is not. It doesn't hold a candle to series one, and it doesn't hold a candle to series three or series four or even series five. Like as episodes go, there are some really great episodes in here, but there's also some duds that do drag it down, as well as the Rose character and how obsessive she got with the Doctor and with her love. And I mean, I know they repeated the whole love situation with Martha in season three, and I will cover that very very soon. But it's still somewhat annoying. Like over the years, I used like as a kid, I loved Rose. I thought she was one of the best companions. But as I grow older, seeing how she treated Mickey and all of that, it just dragged the character down for me. Like you can still love Rose as a companion. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but for me, I don't see her in the same light as I did as a kid, and it's the same with a lot of these episodes. I like rewatching them. I don't see them in the same light as I did as a kid, and that's okay. That's completely fine. But yeah, the question that I posed in the title, does series two hold up? Kind of is the answer that I will give. Hello and welcome back to another brand new video where once again I am discussing Doctor Who. This time I'm talking about the fact that series 3 of the revival of Doctor Who is very forgettable. I just finished my rewatch of it as I'm recording this, and even as I was rewatching it, it was kind of forgettable in a way. So let me explain. With all of Doctor Who, series 3 is the one season I don't return to all that often. I think the most I'll ever return to is the Human Nature and the Family of Blood episode, Blink, and the Master three-parter. Odd Times, Daleks in Manhattan would be another one. That two-parter would be another one that I would return to. All the other episodes, not really. And again, there's a few episodes in here that I haven't seen since it first aired, being The Lazarus Experiment and 42. And I believe the Shakespeare Code. I think I've returned to that once or twice, but not in full. So yeah, I suppose we will get started with the beginning of the series with Smith and Jones. Our first introduction to Martha Jones, who the actress Freema Agyeman was last seen in the Army of Ghosts and Doomsday episode, which does get referenced in this one that it was a cousin of Martha that was in the Battle of Canary Wharf and obviously died. And it's basically her hospital, as she's a med student, gets pulled up to the moon, and we get to see the Judoon for the first time. And they're hunting for someone who essentially drinks blood and can trick the Judoon scanners into thinking she's a member of that species. In this case, it's humans. So some shenanigans happen, and they end up finding her and kill her and bring everyone back. And so the Doctor decides, because Martha saved him, she gets one trip in the TARDIS. And so as the first trip, it's to see Shakespeare. So now we're moving into the Shakespeare Code, which is an episode that I've maybe haven't returned to in full since it first aired 16 years ago, back in 2007. And it was okay. Like with Smith and Jones, it was okay. It's a decent enough story evolving one of the lost plays of Shakespeare, and also involves witches known as the Carianites. And it's, your average run-of-the-mill episode. Definitely one of the lines doesn't hold up all these years later, when the Doctor basically says, good old JK, for JK Rowling. But yeah, see, the funny thing about this episode was originally it was supposed to be centered around JK Rowling, I believe. If memory serves me correct from what I've heard about what this episode was supposed to be, but she turned it down. It was originally going to be about just before she publishes the first Harry Potter book, and there's going to be this entity-like thing, kind of like the Dementors from Prisoners of Azkaban, and that was then going to give her influence for them in Prisoner of Azkaban. I'm hoping I'm remembering that correctly. If someone knows what I'm talking about, please do put that in the comments down below. So yeah, first two episodes, pretty decent. Next is Gridlock, which sees the return of the classic monsters, the Macra, which hasn't been seen since, I believe, the second Doctor story, the Macra Terror, which I've never seen before. I haven't seen. Well, when I say I've never seen before, I meant on about the Macra Terror. I've never seen that before, but I've obviously seen Gridlock, and I've flipped what I originally thought of this episode, because as a kid I thought it was okay, not okay, but not the greatest episode. I mean, it's the last time we see the face of Bo, and it's also here where we once again return to New York, and we see the aftermath of the last time the Doctor was here, with Rose a series prior, and it's gone to shit. Um, Basically, in order to save all the people in New York, they uh, essentially, for 24 years, had them stuck in this motorway with Macra in the bottom. And it's like I said, I changed my mind on this episode. I like it more than I did when I first watched it, when it first aired in 2007. And there was one character that the voice I could recognize because it's Irish. I was like, I recognize this voice. Who the hell is it? And so as I was watching it, I looked it up. And lo and behold, it's the actor who plays Father Dougal Maguire in Father Ted. I was like, how it basically was me looking him up to realize that is Father Dougal Maguire, who plays Brannigan, the cat person. But yeah, I definitely have changed my mind on this episode. And then, of course, after that, we get the Daleks in Manhattan two-parter. So, Daleks in Manhattan and the evolution of the Daleks is one that, once again, I kind of flip-flop on. Whereas when it first came out, I thought it was decent. Then, of course, later on, on a few rewatches, I hated it. It's not the best Dalek story in the Russell T Davies era, and it's definitely not the best Dalek story in all of Doctor Who. And then from this rewatch, going in with a fresher, more open-minded to actually give it a proper chance, it's good. I genuinely do like it. It's, like I said, it's not the best Dalek story in the Russell era. It's definitely at the bottom of the list. But it's decent. I do like it. We see a young Andrew Garfield in this. And it's decent. There's not really much more I can really say on this one. Other than it's decent. It's not the best. Like I said, it's at the very bottom, but it's still a Dalek story that's okay at best. It's one that you don't necessarily need to return to much if you're rewatching all the Dalek episodes from all of Modern Who, especially from the Russell era, or Russell era 1, whichever way you want to refer to this, the first era of Russell. So then next is the Lazarus experiment. And it was an episode that I haven't watched or watched in full since it first came out back in 2007. And I liked it better than I did when it first came out. Like when it first came out, I thought it was bad. It just wasn't. It didn't grip me as a kid. Whereas now, when I look at it, I can actually pay more closer attention to the dialogue and how things are. It's okay. Does the CGI hold up for the Lazarus Scorpion? Absolutely not. But it's a good. It's not good. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not great. It's all right. For a story, which does have later implications in the Master three-parter. And then I was just thinking actually when I was rewatching it, the mysterious man, which is what he's credited as in the episode, when he goes up to Martha's mother to inform him of the doctor and that, originally I was thinking, that should have been the Master. It should have been John Sims' Master, but maybe he hadn't been casted at that point yet. Um, uh, or and that, but that's what I initially thought until before I recorded this, I sat and thought about it a bit more. It's like, hang on a second. In the End of Time Part 1, we know that the Master had a secret cult organization that, knew of him, knew of the Doctor and all that. So now to me, that makes perfect sense because that's how that's how this person was able to inform Martha's mother about the Doctor, and hence why she got linked with Saxon, the Master. But yeah, now it's time for 42, which is a Chris Chibnall episode, and yeah, I don't know how I would describe it really. It's not the best, it's not the worst that Chibnall has written. That honor I believe goes to Orphan 55. I'm pretty sure he wrote that episode. Um, but yeah, it's not the best. Uh, having the sun as a living, breathing thing, not his best idea. That's for sure. But as an episode that has one main gimmick, and that is when they mention the countdown. The countdown, it coincides with the episode, excluding the ending and the beginning. From as soon as you see the countdown to begin to when it ends, is actually 42 minutes in length. So I think that's pretty neat. For what Chibnall tried to do with that episode, it's pretty neat. But you can definitely tell like it's one of those less cost effective episodes that they done on like a very small budget out of the whole greater budget, because there wasn't that many actors involved. There was some CG scenes, yeah, but in total I'd say there might have been like less than 15 actors on working in this episode, because you have Martha's mother coming back, you have someone from that works with Harold Saxon, but yeah, no, there's probably less than 10 to 15 people on working on this episode, because some of them do get killed off, but it's okay. I don't hate it as much as I did when I first watched it. Watching it, trying to go in with, like I said, what I've done with a lot of these episodes that I haven't seen since it first aired. I already have like an opinion on them. I try to go into these with a more of an open mind, and it's not as bad. But yeah, the first half, as I said, up until this point, Series 3, Episode 7, is genuinely the most forgettable part of the series, because I know what happens in a lot of them. I could read the title and I know what happens in the episode, but it's forgettable in the fact that I don't return to them as often. Like, most of these episodes, I'll either except for, like I said, the Daleks in Manhattan, Evolution of the Daleks, and from Human Nature onwards are episodes I return to the most. All the others, as I said, two of them didn't even come back to for 16 years, and it's just that they're okay. It's definitely the second half of the season that somewhat saves this season for me, because those are such amazing episodes that I will get into after a brief little interlude. Okay, so breaking continuity here. I'm recording this just before I even finished my Series 3 rewatch, and uh, yeah, I just wanted to record this as soon as I actually had the finished it. So, um, the technically first Doctor Who animated story, well, from the David Tennant era, is the Infinity Quest, and I kind of had no idea where I wanted to put this in the review, because after watching it, there's no real mention of Martha having just one trip and then being dropped back like she did in the vast majority of um, the first 6 episodes, until we get to the Lazarus experiment, where she then becomes a full-time companion. So I actually watched this after I watched 42, which is where I'm actually going to put it in timeline. Even though it's technically not canon per se, um, I still wanted to cover it, and I'll be doing the same with Dreamland when I get to the 2009 specials. Anyway, so what did I think of Doctor Who: The Infinity Quest? Because this was actually my first time actually watching it. Now, I actually never knew this existed until I watched a review by Harbo Holmes, who reviews the individual episodes of the show over on his YouTube channel. And so this was my first time sitting down watching it in full, because I believe it was released anyway for the CBBC. So I think it was on the DVD. It says totally Doctor Who on it, so it might be a release for that. But it was all right, as a story of how things progressed throughout the story. Was really good. I loved how, because of the animation form, that we could see all these new places, all these new creatures that wouldn't necessarily translate well into the live action, for some of them, with the giant mantises, and the different planets that they went to. We have a desert planet, we have a swampish planet, we then have the a snow planet, and then we actually have where the infinite rests. And I don't think this episode would have looked well had it been in live action. And there is a lot of things that I did not like about it, such as it felt Big Finish to me, in a sense, with the way David Tennant and Freeman Agyeman was, how they were doing their voices. Yet it's basically just them doing Doctor Who and that, but it didn't have the certain deliveries that you'd expect. If they have to run, there's not that correct delivery there with it. But other than that, like I said, it was all right. I actually really did like the art style that was used for this one. I much preferred the art style for the Infinite Quest over Dreamland, that's for sure. But as a whole, it's okay. It's definitely not needed for your rewatch or watch through of the show. I just watched it because I you know, I have how I have my Doctor Who collection is I have them in timeline order. So that's how I'm watching through this show is timeline order for the modern series. You know, with Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, Slash Infinite Quest, Series 4, the specials with Dreamland, and Series 5 and on. So, back to the regular video. And back. So, yeah, now we get on to the rest of the season. And we start off with Human Nature and Family of Blood. Now, last year I did do a top 5 favorite modern Doctor Who episodes, and this two-parter was on that list. I believe it was number 5. And after this rewatch of it, you know, having not rewatched it for, you know, a few years, it's been a while since I returned to this episode. I genuinely love it. It's pretty amazing. It's definitely top tier modern Doctor Who episodes and a top tier David Tennant episode. My God, his acting in Family of Blood with him, you know, being John Smith, not wanting to be the Doctor again, is amazing. But I'm getting ahead of myself here because there's 2 things I need to mention about this two-parter. The first is this 2-parter was originally a 7th Doctor book that was released during the Wilderness years, you know, after the show got cancelled, before the TV movie. This was one of those books that was released in that time period. It was a 7th Doctor story. And the original author for that book came back for this 2-part episode. And there's a Easter egg that I finally noticed on this rewatch of when the Doctor and the Matron are walking and he goes to fix a scarecrow. He mentions his mother and father, a Sydney and a Verity, and it clicked. That's a reference to Sidney Newman, the creator of Doctor Who, and Verity Lambert, the first producer of the show. And it only clicked because, like, after an Adventure in Time and Space, where I actually learned more about Sidney Newman and Verity Lambert that I didn't know when that short came out. So just wanted to bring that up in case, you know, there's some people who, like myself, only initially grew up with modern Who that didn't know about the creator's name or Verity Lambert. So yeah, and then of course, you know, as I stated, this is a fantastic episode from start to finish. It is jam packed, and it was one of my favorite episodes as a kid, and it still holds up to me to this day. Like, as I was saying, when I was watching David Tennant acting in Family of Blood, when you know, they were trying to force him to be the Doctor again, the way he done the dialogue was amazing. And I was watching the deleted scenes. There's a deleted scene that I wish they kept in. It was between Timothy and Hudgens, I believe.
I knew you'd survive.
Go away.
You had to for the vision to come true.
Stop talking like that.
You told me. Here. Hold it. Just hold it. What can you hear?
Nothing.
I thought so. It's like it's just meant for me. I mean, if the Watcher stayed where it was, we'd all be dead by now. It's like it knew. It wanted me to carry it.
What for?
You're right. I have been a coward. I was so scared of him. Now it's time for me to do my duty.
Where are you going?
Hutchinson in a few years will be fighting again, in the mud and the dark. Will you trust me?
I don't know what you mean.
Will you trust me?
Yes.
I wish they had kept that in, because that would have that was I would have explained a bit more to it, if you get me. And then of course after this episode was another light episode in terms of actors and set pieces and that is everybody's favorite episode, Blink. And it still holds up, but it's slightly, this is going to get me crucified, it's slightly overrated to me now. You know, that I've watched it so many times that it's almost kind of lost that charm for me. But again, it's one of those episodes that it's been a while since I watched it, and hell, I even remember having back in the day when some of the newspapers used to give you like singular episodes for free with it. I remember getting the Blink one, and I used to watch that all the time. And I don't, like I said, it's a tad bit overrated to me now, but it's still a fantastic episode. And from beginning to end, with how that there's not, as I said, it's a light episode to save on budget, but it was done right, and it's another amazing episode that Stephen Moffat done before he took over as showrunner, and kind of, we'll get to that. We're getting to that very, very soon. It'll take 2 months, but we'll get to this, to the Moffat era. That's for damn sure, because I do have a lot of things to say about those. But yeah, fantastic episode, tiny bit overrated. And now we get to the 3-part episode, Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and The Last of the Time Lords. Now, I love these episodes. Utopia, a fantastic start to the 3-parter. Fantastic start, getting introduced to Professor Yana, the bringing Jack back, for the first time since series 1. Like, I know he's had Torchwood and that, but it's the first time he's been brought back to the main show. And then, as well, then the whole, how everything unfolds, you don't think it's going to be related to that, and then until you meet Professor Yana, whose initials basically spell out "You are not alone," which is the warning that the Face of Bow gave the Doctor all the way back in season 3, episode 3. So then it turns out, after the Master opens the fob watch, that it's the War Master, the Master that fought during the Time War. And he then escapes in the TARDIS after being shot by Chanto, and regenerates into John Sims. And I still love John Sims' portrayal of the Master. Like, he's definitely not my absolute favorite iteration of the Master. Like, to me, it goes Roger Delgado, the original Master, and then Michelle Gomez, and then John Sims. But practically, I love everyone who's portrayed the Master, except for Sacha Dhawan. I don't like his iteration of the Master. I still don't. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So, The Sound of Drums, the second part in this trilogy, is amazing from start to finish. You are on your toes. The Doctor, Martha, and Jack have to go into hiding because they are public enemy number 1, 2, and 3. And basically it's just showing, with the Master now being the Prime Minister of England, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. And then of course we learn what he's done with the TARDIS. He turned it into a paradox machine, which allows the Tocylphen, which is the last surviving humans from the end of time, to come back in these little balls yolks and basically kill their, the past humans. In order to keep that balance, we have the paradox machine. And then it ends with the Doctor being aged up and Martha on the run. And then we get to the last of the Time Lords. And this one is a lot, it's a very decisive amongst fans. You know, a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't. And I like it up to a certain point. I think it's a really good episode up until a certain point. And that is when the Doctor goes Jesus mode, essentially, where he taps into the Archangel network. All these people are thinking about the Doctor, which then makes him, you know, magically go from the little gimp that he was all the way back up to his normal self. And then, of course, the timeline gets reverted. The Master dies. Sorry for that hiccup. And Martha leaves. And we also find out that Captain Jack is the face of Bo, which has never been brought up again since that. So yeah, but Martha leaves, and it's sad because, you know, she's a really good companion. As I was growing up, I never liked Martha. I didn't like her, but now, you know, as I've grown up, I've come to appreciate her more. She's a fantastic companion throughout the entire series. The only gripe that I have with her, and it's the same gripe that a lot of people have with her, and that is her falling in love with the Doctor. And as I was watching it, it did not make sense. Like, it happened so quickly. Like, I get, and probably, you know, if I think about it, it probably started, you know, in Smith and Jones, you know, with the kiss and all that. But, you know, in the first two episodes, she made it clear that she has absolutely no feelings for the Doctor. And then by episode 3 and onwards, suddenly she has these feelings for the Doctor. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Whereas with Rose, it was built up over time. With this, we're just told that she has feelings. It's not built, to me, it doesn't feel built up enough for it. But all in all, season 3 is just forgettable, except for the last few episodes, really. And it sucks because, you know, I definitely did enjoy my rewatch of season 3, because in the past I used to always rank series 3 down at essentially near the bottom. If I was to rate back then, when if I was to rate all the seasons, but now, you know, it's a good season, but very forgettable. So it would rank lower if I was to do a complete series 1 to 13 ranking. It would definitely rank towards the bottom. You know, it'd be definitely above the Jodie Whittaker era. That's for sure. Which I did do a video on last year if you want to go check it out. But yeah, it's good but forgettable. That's the only downfall that it has. Hello and welcome back to my Doctor Who series retrospectives, where today we are covering the 4th season of Doctor Who. And I have to ask the question, is season 4 of Doctor Who overrated? Let's find out with my rewatch. When I tell you this video took a while for me to get through, just to rewatch season 4 is an understatement. Now, I've been mentioning this for in January and February, because that's when I was, you know, trying to rewatch the 4th season of the show legally. So what happened? Well, as I'm doing these rewatches, I'm also watching the Christmas episodes. I may not talk about them in the whole series review, because I'm saving that for a video in December. I still watch them in order. I'm watching every episode in order. And with my original series 4 box, which is actually over there on the window, you can't really see it, but I had bought that back in May of last year, when I was still slowly growing my Doctor Who physical media collection. And I didn't know at the time that the disc that had the Time Crash Children in Need special, as well as the Voyage in the Damned special, had disc rot on it. They sold it to me with disc rot, and yeah, I spent a good while after. I only discovered that when I went to start my rewatch for Series 4. And all the other discs seemed fine. But yeah, it took me a while to get this replacement. And even then, I've still had issues. But I've managed to get through it and completely rewatch Series 4. And my opinions have definitely changed on a lot of stuff, because again, with a lot of the seasons of Doctor Who, there's a good few episodes that I have not watched since it originally aired. But let's get started with the talking about the actual episodes. Okay, so Partners in Crime, the first reintroduction to Catherine Tate, and well, originally it wasn't going to be Catherine Tate. Russell didn't think she would come back. He had kind of had a different companion in mind, known as Penny, and he was, toying with a different story idea for the first episode of Series 4, and he had hoped originally to get Catherine Tate back for Journey's End, whilst he was, all these episodes were in early development, but then of course, Catherine Tate obviously has come back for Series 4, and we got the Series 4 that we got. So, Partners in Crime. I watched it a few times since it's aired. It's a good episode, it's not bad, it's not great, it's your run-of-the-mill story, obviously elevated by the comedic duo that is David Tennant and Catherine Tate, and I really do look forward to seeing them later on this year in the 60th anniversary. But yeah, not really much else to say other than it's a good episode. It's a good way to reintroduce Donna as a companion. And I remember as a kid being really looking forward to it. And then of course I need to talk about the ending to the episode with that little sneak peek of Rose. Yes, Rose showing up at the end of this episode blew my mind as a kid, because I wasn't expecting that. I had no idea she was coming back. I literally thought, like a lot of people did at the time, that was it. There's no way Rose could come back. But here she was. And she would make a few little appearances throughout the seasons, if you notice it. And then, of course, she fully returns in later, towards the end of the season. The last 3 episodes of the season, she is a full guest role then. But yeah, Partners in Crime was okay. Now, we go to the Fires Up on Pay. This is an episode that I don't think I've returned to that much, but I think I have returned to it since it's aired. And, I've come out with the thinking, poor Donna. This is her first real adventure in the TARDIS, and I'm surprised she even stayed afterwards. Having to process being one of the 2 people responsible for the destruction of Pompeii, the death of all those people, and trying to convince the Doctor to save people, but obviously he can't because it's a fixed point in time. He can't save everyone. So she's desperately trying to convince him to save just one. Save someone. And of course, we see he does. He saves his future regeneration phase of Peter Capaldi. Yes, Peter Capaldi is in this episode before he even shows up as the Doctor. And then, of course, he shows up in Torchwood Children of Earth as well, before he finally lands the role of the Doctor. Anyway, I'm rambling. Yeah, poor Donna. Literally, first adventure out, having to deal with the consequences of fixed points in time, and how the Doctor just can't save everyone. Even though she's begging and pleading and literally ugly crying to get him to do it, but no. It takes him it takes a while for Donna to convince the Doctor to save just one person, and he ends up saving 4, which is good, And then the next episode, Planet of the Ood, is a first-time rewatch for me because I haven't seen it since it first aired back in 2008. Jesus Christ, I'm old. But yeah, okay episode, but again, I came out with the same thought afterwards, like, wow, Donna's first two proper trips in the TARDIS, not the greatest, having to deal with the consequences of the trauma from being the reason that Pompeii's volcano, Mount Vesuvius, erupted in the first place, and then the very next episode having to deal with space slaverism. Not a good outing for Donna for her first two stories. It really isn't. Like, as I was rewatching it, I was thinking, Jesus Christ, how the fuck is she still traveling with him until the end of the season? Like, if that was me having to deal with that traumatic experience and then leading into space slavism, I would have fucking left. I was like, no, this universe is not for me. Fuck that. But of course, Donna, of course, did stick it out towards the end. And the next episode is a two-parter. And the first time, it's another, we bring in back another classic monster from classic Doctor Who with a new redesign. And it's the Sontarans. And I didn't grow up with the classic Sontarans. I've obviously seen them in clips. Like, and then, of course, I remember seeing them in the two Doctors, Sixth Doctor story, that I seen bits and pieces of as a kid. But this was my first proper introduction to the Sontarans, and I like the redesign. I love the fact that, in Flux, that they went to the classic design of the Sontarans. But I still like this design of the Sontarans, having them being a little bit more shorter than the classic and Flux counterparts. But yeah, so the story has Martha Jones in it, yes. Not long after her departure, she comes back for 3 whole episodes, not including the last 2 of this story, of this season. And she was alright. She was okay. Like, it's the same well, how should I best describe it? Martha's character definitely has changed from the Last of the Time Lords to this two-parter. She definitely feels more like the Martha that traveled the Earth for a year, the year that never was. From the end of the Sound of Drums to the Last of the Time Lords. She feels more like that. She feels like the version of Martha that we never got to see from that year that never was. And yeah, it's great. It's like, I love Freema Agyeman. I've definitely changed my opinions on Martha as a companion. But yeah, she was just okay. The story in of itself is okay. Like, I like that we get to see Unit, and as well as the return of the Valiant, which was again, seen last season, which it does get another mention again later on in this season. But yeah, it was okay. Now, The Doctor's Daughter, the next episode that also features Martha. I don't have too many memories of this. I don't believe I seen it when it first aired. Season 4, there's 2 I think this and another episode is an episode that I missed because of circumstance, of when it was airing, and I just wasn't at home unfortunately to watch the episode, and so I only ended up watching it after its air date, and so I think that's what tainted my opinion on this episode, and that is, it's okay. It's okay. The Doctor and Donna and Jenny are okay. The Doctor, the way he acts is rightfully so. the way I expected the Doctor would act in that given situation. You know, out of nowhere now he's back to being a father, and he has to deal with that. Deal with the surfacing memories of losing his family in the Time War, his children, his grandchildren, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it's okay. The twist, though, I do like the twist that, you know, it's a generational war that's only lasted 2 weeks. I think that's a pretty good twist. Uh, I did not see that coming when I watched it, and yeah, so it is just okay. So next up we have the Unicorn and the Wasp, and you know, it's good. You know, it's not the best, not the worst. Great that we get to see Agatha Christie. You know, because Doctor Who has a tendency to bring all these great literature beings into the show, like Charles Dickens in season 1, William Shakespeare in season 3. So it makes sense to have Agatha Christie in season 4. And the Unicorn and the Wasp is okay. Again, just plain old okay. Okay, so now we get to the last 6 episodes of this season. And so with the Silence in the Library and the Forest of the Dead, that two-parter, I remember watching that. See, I have memories of this episode. You know, I watched it. I watched part 1. I remember watching part 1. I don't remember watching part 2. I probably did. I just don't have as strong memories of that episode as a kid. You see, with part 1, I think I had just lost a tooth, and I was just waiting for the tooth fairy, and my cousin, who now lives in America, was over as well for that. So that's kind of the memories that I have with the Forest of the Dead and Silence of the Library. But I definitely think I missed episode 2. I can't remember, but I probably did. But it's still a great two-parter nonetheless. It's the first two-parter to introduce us to the character of River Song, who Moffat would then go on to write with one hand down in his pants and the other hand, you know, typing away every time he brings back River Song. And, you know, as a first introduction to River Song, the person who knows the Doctor before he knows her is a fantastic idea. You know, because that's the way time travel can be. And that's how it was portrayed in the show. You know, where we get to see this character when the Doctor doesn't know her, but she knows him. She knows all of his other faces. She knows all the companions that he's been with. She has his sonic screwdriver. She knows his name. How? Why? When are we going to see that? Well, we get to see that when Moffat takes over as showrunner after this season and the specials. And yeah, it's, you know, it's a fantastic two-parter, and I love it. I do love it. Now we get to Midnight. I don't like Midnight. Well, no. See, before my rewatch, I didn't like Midnight. I missed it on its first airing, and then when I finally went back to it, and I watched it, I hated it. I genuinely hated it. And the few other times that I rewatched this story, I've hated it. Now with this current rewatch, I don't mind it as much. It's still way, way overrated. What people say it is, saying that it's one of the best episodes ever. It's not. It is way too overrated. It's a bottled episode where, again, you know, for lack of budgetary reasons, it's all shot in this one room with the Doctor and a few other people, including Merlin from BBC's Merlin. Remember that show? Yeah, he's in this episode as a angsty emo guy. Kind of. He has to deal with a Karen for a mother, so I can understand why he's like that. Anywhoosies, yeah, I appreciate the episode more now on this rewatch, but I still think it's overrated. It's one that I think had I watched it when it first aired back in 2008, I would probably be singing a different tune than what I am now. But because I didn't see it when it first aired and when I watched it as a teen, and I just didn't like it then, I think it's okay now. I definitely think the next episode, Turn Left, is a far superior episode to this, with one glaring issue with that episode. So, let's talk about Turn Left now. So, Turn Left is by far my favorite episode of Season 4. I think it's a fantastic episode, getting to see a massive what-if theory of what if Donna wasn't there to stop the Doctor. And we get to see that. Essentially get to see the ramifications of that. The Doctor dies. Sarah Jane, Luke, Clyde, and Maria die. Martha dies. The Yonto and Gwen die. Jack is sent off to the Sontaran homeworld. And yeah, essentially everyone that the Doctor knows and loves dies after he does, because there's no one really there to save, to do all these things, to save these people. But I noticed a glaring issue with this episode, and that is, without Donna being there to have those particles in her that resonates with the TARDIS, that flings her to the TARDIS, how does the Doctor get involved? The whole reason why the Doctor got involved with fighting the Rachnos in the first place is because of Donna being there. Without Donna being there, how does the Doctor end up fighting the Rachnos? But it has also other ramifications as well. When they go to shoot down the alien star, originally in The Runaway Bride, it's mentioned of Saxon. Harold Saxon says, shoot it down. And then we see it being shot down. But in Turn Left, because Donna never met the Doctor never went back in time to then, go forward in time to end up meeting the Master, and for him to then travel back in time to become the Prime Minister. So that all never happens because Donna never met the Doctor. And it's also now where we get to see Rose fully in this episode. We get to fully see her. And the way her character has somewhat shifted since the, season 2, where she was all over the Doctor, all of this and that. That made me not like her character. Whole 180 in this episode. And again, it's a whole another 180 in the next 2 episodes. And yeah, so Turn Left to me is way better than Midnight. And it's my personal favorite out of the 13 episodes of Season 4. So let's get talking about the last 2 episodes. Stolen Earth and The Journey's End. Doctor Who's Infinity War and Endgame before Infinity War and Endgame was a movie. Now this is what the past 3-4 years of the show has been, since 2005 to 2008, the past 4 seasons have been building up to this, including the spin-offs. It brings them in, the Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood. With Sarah Jane Adventures, I'd say it'd be in between seasons 1 and season 2 before Maria left. And with Torchwood, it's just after season 2, but before Children of Earth. Obviously. So, yeah. The Stolen Earth essentially is the Infinity War of Doctor Who, where it's building everything up, Earth gets stolen as well as 27 other planets throughout all the time and space. The Doctor's trying to figure it out, but then on Earth, where they end up, it turns out it's none other than the Daleks. Yes, the Daleks are back, and Dalek Khan is as well, because he broke into the Time Ward that was time locked and yanked Davros out and saved Davros from the jaws of the Nightmare Child. So, yeah, now there's this big massive Dalek army, and they want to detonate a reality bomb to kill everything. So that way they're the only beings in existence. And so we get to see what Martha's up to. She's in New York. We get to hear about this Project Indigo, which is a teleport. We also hear about an Austin Hargan key, which gets paid off in the next episode. And then she's out of commission for a good while. And then we see Torchwood with Yanto and Gwen. See them dealing with that. And then we cut to Bannerman Road with Sarah, Jane, and Luke. And then we cut to, Rose landing on Earth in this time, and then meeting up with Donna's family. And then we get to see former Prime Minister Harriet Jones, and how she has created the Subwave network for this eventual thing. And so she falls. And then it ends with the Doctor finally coming in to it all. He sees Rose. They're running towards each other. And I remember distinctly with this episode, my mother saying, "Just throw the gun, you idiot," in relation to Rose. Because as she's running towards the Doctor, she's still holding her gun. She hasn't thrown it. And then, of course, the big thing that happened in this episode, the thing that I was shocked about, and basically everyone was shocked about, the Doctor gets shot by a Dalek, and they carry him back into the TARDIS, and he starts to regenerate. And this had, for an entire week, everyone in a buzz, thinking, is he going to regenerate? Who's going to be the new Doctor? Is David Tennant leaving Doctor Who? All got answered in Journey's End. No. The Doctor wastes one of his 13 lives. We're not counting the Timeless Child in this. I'm convinced that the Time Lords put the 13 regeneration limit onto the Doctor. Somehow they managed to find out a way to do that. Anyway, not talking about the Timeless Child. Back to Journey's End. This episode, my God, these two episodes are still one of the best Dalek stories out there. Like, it's tied, to me, it's tied with the 2005 Dalek story. It's that good. We get to, the Doctor sees what he's become. He might go through, preaching, he doesn't do violence and all that, but he forges his companions into these weapons. With Martha thinking of using the Osterhagen key that will detonate nukes on Earth and destroy it. With Sarah Jane Smith, with the Warp Star. And it's just, in the end, yeah. And then we get to see the Meta-Crisis Doctor, who is half human, half Time Lord. Still wondering how the Timeless Child is going to explain him. Again, sorry, we're not talking about the Timeless Child. Back to this. So yeah, the TARDIS, which we assumed was destroyed in part 1, obviously it's not, because we got to see that. In this episode, not in part 1. Comes back with Donna and the Meta-Crisis Doctor, in a new suit, by the way. They then, he gets electric shocked by Davros. So does Donna. But that's where Davros made his mistake. You see, when Donna was touching the Doctor's handy spare hand, the regeneration energy went into her. It's a two-way metabolic time thingamajig. And so she's now has the Doctor's brain, essentially everything the Doctor knows, inside her head. And so she uses that to her advantage, and saves the day. But Khan then says, the prophecy must still be fulfilled. And so he then commits genocide. And it's, again, here, it's something that I've been noticing with my rewatch of the David Tennant era. I'll be bringing it up in next month's video when I talk about the specials. Here is where we see another variant of the Time Lord victorious with the Metacrisis Doctor. You know, he's bored in battle. He has the blood-fueled rage for battle. Hence why he had to be sent to the parallel Earth. Also, so Rose could get her happy ending and all that. And yeah, so that's been season 4. Is season 4 overrated? I mean, kinda. You know, like, there's a lot of great episodes in this season, you know. And then there's also a lot of episodes that are, like, just okay. So, yeah, it's kind of overrated. Especially Midnight. Midnight is severely overrated. And I've had people try to explain it to me. And I'm just like, I don't know why you're trying to explain it to me. I obviously know what the episode's about. I've seen the episode. I just don't think it's good. And people in the Doctor Who subreddit get really upset at me because I don't like Midnight. But anyway, that's been my video. Hello and welcome back to another brand new Doctor Who review. I do notice that poster is kicked up. I can't be bothered to go fix it. But yeah, welcome back to another brand new Doctor Who review where I'm covering the 2009 specials. Kind of. As you can tell by the thumbnail, it shows the 3 episodes that I am covering, being the Planet of the Dead Easter special, the 2009 autumn special, The Waters of Mars, as well as the animated Dreamland episode. Why am I not including the End of Times parts 1 and 2? Because, you know, it does count as the 2009 specials. It's also a Christmas special, so I will get to that later on in the year, like with the other Christmas specials that I have not reviewed, like The Runaway Bride, the 2007 Voyage of the Damned, 2008's The Next Doctor. So I will get to those eventually. So let's start this off with the first Easter special, Planet of the Dead. Now, this is the very first HD story of Doctor Who, and I remember watching it in my dad's. Yeah, I went to stay with him, his partner, and my granny on my dad's side for Easter when this special was out, and I remember watching it in the room that I had, and it was okay. I remember thinking it was okay, but upon, you know, rewatch, because I haven't really seen it much since it first aired back in 2009. I think this might be like a second or third rewatch. I'm not 100% sure, but I enjoyed it on this current rewatch. You know, it's not as bad as I remember it, but the one person that I definitely do not like is Lady Christine. I just find her character to be kind of annoying and stuff. But otherwise, you know, having Lee Evans being as Malcolm, a part of Unit, and, you know, seeing Unit again, you know, we haven't really seen them since Turn Left, and that was in a parallel universe. You know, it's nice to see them again. Actually, no, sorry, I'm mistaken. The last time we saw them was briefly in Journey's End / The Stolen Planets. So I will correct myself there. But yeah, you know, it's an okay episode. But it's also in this episode that we get the, you know, he will knock 4 times, your song is ending, from one of the bus passengers who is somewhat of a psychic. And yeah, this is, you know, the indication that the Doctor is at the end of his life, which obviously we knew beforehand, because he did announce his departure in these 4 specials. So yeah, decent enough. I definitely enjoyed it more on this current rewatch than what I remembered. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's just okay. But yeah, just to give you kind of like an idea of when I'm recording this, this video isn't actually going to be due out until at least sometime in May. I haven't fully decided yet. I'm recording this in March because I literally just watched these 2 episodes. It's actually the 13th of March, and I just watched these 2 episodes back to back. And yeah, I'm actually going to go in release order of timeline, because I initially thought Dreamland took place before the Waters of Mars, and that it can still technically be the case, but I'm going in release order where this came out and then this was released several days later on the CBBC until December 9th. So yes, The Water on Mars, which is another co-written episode, because The Planet of the Dead was written by Russell T Davies and Gareth Roberts, and now The Waters of Mars has been co-written by Russell T Davies and Phil Ford. Now, this is an episode that a lot of people absolutely love and adore, and I agree. Like, I don't think it's so overrated whatsoever. This really does hold up, and this is also the tail end / beginning of the Time Lord Victorious arc, which I will get to. So the basic plot, of this is basically the Doctor is tasked once again with a fixed point in time, where once he realizes it, he keeps trying to go, but he's constantly been dragged into these sorts of events, and eventually, after the rocket has to be self-destructed due to the infection, that's when the Time Lord Victorious finally snaps. I'm very bad at clicking my finger, so we'll just go with that. So yeah, the Time Lord Victorious. You see, the one thing that I've loved about my rewatch so far of the David Tennant era is that you notice things. Once you know about the Time Lord Victorious, you start to notice things showing up early on. Now, I have been making mention of this, in my Christmas Invasion review last December. I make mention of it, with how after the Doctor spares the Sycorax leader's life, the Sycorax leader obviously goes to attack the Doctor from behind, and the Doctor just, without a moment's hesitation, throws the Satsuma at the wall and kills the Sycorax leader. And as I quote, "I'm at no second chances. I'm that sort of person." And then throughout, season 2, there's certain instances where we see it, in the Idiot's Lantern, mainly when the Doctor separated from Rose, that we see it. There are certain episodes in season 3 and season 4 that we do see it, and it all ends up in this. Now, there is, of course, the Time Lord Victorious expanded media in books and audios. I don't fully understand the whole. I haven't looked too deeply into that Time Lord Victorious arc, but yeah, it's even at once Adelaide unalives herself at the end of the episode after the Doctor saves her. That's when the Doctor realizes that he's gone too far, and that this is the end for him. But instead of just immediately going to the planet of the year to start to deal with all of this, he goes on a little joyride. We see that in the 50th anniversary, which I will get to at some point. And then we have the Dreamland. So we'll get on to Dreamland now. Now, Dreamland is a it's an animated story. It was originally released in, I believe, 6 episodes, all around 7 minutes long. The whole total is like an average full length episode of about approximately 44 minutes. And basically, the Doctor decides to go to near Roswell, New Mexico, and in the 50s, and then he uncovers all this stuff having to do with Area 51 and these two races that are at war, and so on and so forth. One of the races being these big cockroach people, that are basically, big brutes. They easily can wipe out a civilization, and these two grey aliens that I guess the main reason why they look like that is to kind of keep intertwined with the Roswell, New Mexico thing, where they think they're these grey aliens, and it's always been depicted like that, and in a lot of media, even in the Simon Pegg Nick Frost film Paul. Paul is somewhat depicted like that, and so yeah, it's an alright story. You know, the standout, of course, is David Tennant, being David Tennant, as well as his wife, Georgia Tennant, or as she is credited in this as Georgia Moffat. So they're obviously, I'd say about a year or two into dating at this point. So they might be engaged, they might not have been, I don't know. But yeah, like it throws you in, it just doesn't like let up or what have you. That's, like I said, that's because it's 6 or 7 episodes stitched together, and there are parts of the episode that you can see that are where an episode had a cliffhanger, because every episode had a cliffhanger, and I believe it aired from November 15th or the 22nd of 2009 all the way up to December 9th. And I do remember watching it. I have memories of this one, but obviously not Infinity Quest. So like I remember watching a lot of the episodes on CBBC, and then of course they would rerun it as well, and so I obviously rewatched the reruns. But this is the first time I've actually sat down and watched it in full, because I don't remember if I've actually seen from beginning to end. I think I missed a few episodes in between as it was airing, and then obviously with the reruns. So yeah, it's not that bad. The animation is a little choppy. It's not the best. It could be better. Like I said, I much prefer the Infinity Quest animation and art style. I think that's far superior than Dreamland is, but it's still nostalgic to me. I have a lot of nostalgic memories for it. Now, this isn't technically canon, but I'm still including it on my Doctor Who rewatch. The same with Infinity Quest. These two animated stories might not be canon, but I still kind of want to include them in my rewatch. So, if you are going to do a rewatch of Doctor Who and you want to include Dreamland in your rewatch, I would watch it after The Waters of Mars. Now, I watched it before The Water of Mars because that's before I figured out the dates and that. So, yeah, it might take place before The Water of Mars, it might take place afterwards. It's kind of hard to pinpoint, but it definitely takes place during the 2009 specials. So, yeah, a short Doctor Who review for once. Now that I'm not, actually reviewing a whole season and just 3 stories. So how would I rate the 2009 specials? Obviously The Water of Mars is the superior one. I'm not going to include The End of Time Parts 1 and 2 in this. Then I would say I would give it to Planet of the Dead. It's not that bad. I definitely really do not like Lady Christina, and I'm glad her Big Finish audio adventures flopped because she's just not that interesting of a character. I'm sorry, she's just really not. And then unfortunately, last I do have to put Dreamland, but I still enjoyed all of the stories. Coming back to them. Some of them I've maybe watched once or twice, but I haven't seen them in several years. Hello. So yes, as promised, for the entire month of December, I'm going to be covering the Doctor Who Christmas specials that I have yet to review. Also early on this year when I was doing my review of series 2 to 10 of Doctor Who, I omitted doing the Christmas specials because I wanted to save them for December. And so that's what we're doing. I've done some background set decoration for some of the Christmas stuff that I have. And yeah, because I'm actually filming this not in November. I'm filming this in September. Yes, September 14th to be exact is when I'm recording this, because I have already watched through the David Tennant Christmas specials. So, before this review starts off, I am going to be omitting one of David Tennant's Christmas specials, and that is The Christmas Invasion, his first story. Why? Because that was last year's Christmas special, where I'd done a full review of that story. Because that was actually my introduction to Doctor Who, was that story. So I'll be basically reviewing The Runaway Bride, Voyage of the Damned, and The Next Doctor, and The End of Time parts 1 and 2. So you're getting 5 stories. So, I actually haven't rewatched them since I first watched them early on this year, so let's dive right in with The Runaway Bride. This episode still holds up. It really does. It's the first episode to introduce Donna Noble, which at the time we thought was a one-off character, before her return in Series 4 and the 60th anniversary, which again, as I'm recording this, hasn't come out for me yet, so I don't know what my thoughts and opinions of the 60th anniversary are yet. I'm pretty sure there is a review for it, though, by the time this comes out. Anywhoosies, yeah, so this episode is really, really good because, it's the Doctor fresh off of losing Rose. And, he's trying to not be grown too much attached to Donna, but at the same time, he's trying to process all of that. He's still trying to process the loss of Rose, his love. And, like I said, it still holds up as a really, really great episode. Catherine Tate, phenomenal in this episode. Really, really, really well done. And she calls the Doctor out on his shit, The Doctor was so close to killing properly the Racnoss. Well, he did, technically. He drowned the children, but she's the one who told him that, hey, you can stop now, because that's one of the main running themes of the Doctor, is if he's left alone too long, if he does not have a companion there to hold him accountable, he will go dark, and he will be vicious, and he will kill. We've seen this mainly in the new revival of the show, of just how dark and evil he can be because of the Time War. And it's honestly still a very good episode, and it's the first hint at the Master with Harold Saxon. And of course, this episode is kind of referenced again in Series 4 for the brilliant episode of Turn Left. So, yeah, really, really, really good episode. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So, now moving on to The Voyage of the Damned, the episode with Kylie Minogue. My first actual crush as a kid. Yes, when I was 3 or 4, my first crush was Kylie Minogue. I'm not afraid to admit that, she's an attractive woman, still is an attractive woman. Anyway, this episode, Voyage of the Damned, was set up at the end of Series 3, obviously, but also at the end of the Time Crash special. Now, I remember when I was getting onto this episode to rewatch it for when I was doing my watch throughs, when I was actually watching every episode, including the Christmas specials at the time, I had so much trouble trying to get to watch this episode for one particular reason. CEX. Now, it's been ages since I brought up this, but basically, when I bought originally my Series 4 DVD box set, a lot of the discs had disc rot, including the disc that I actually needed, and so eventually I got sent a replacement, which also had issues, so I couldn't even rewatch Time Crash because of that, which sucked, and I still haven't. To this day, I haven't because there's no proper way to watch it. But now that I think about it, I might have a way. So by the time this comes out, I probably will have watched it. Anyway, back to the story. The Voyage of the Damned, after this rewatch, is okay. You know, it's not the best of the David Tennant Christmas specials. You know, we had two really strong ones with the Christmas Invasion and the Runaway Bride. And this one, you know, set on Space Titanic, is okay. You know, Kylie Minogue in it is, you know, I loved it as a kid, but when on this rewatch, I didn't necessarily like her character, you know. It just didn't really gel well with me. The same with all the other characters that the Doctor interacted with, but the two main ones obviously was Alonso, which allowed the Doctor to finally say Alonso, which was a reference to the end of Series 2 of Doctor Who in the Army of Ghosts. And then, of course, the other one was Wilfred Mott, who we didn't know technically was called Wilfred Mott. Obviously, by the time the episode comes out, or at least when I was watching the credits for the Series 4, on the Series 4 DVD, he is credited as, Bernard Cribbins is credited as Wilfred Mott. And so, you know, again, everyone loves Bernard Cribbins as Wilfred Mott. May he rest in peace. You know, and I'm really glad that we got to see him again in the 60th anniversary. Again, haven't necessarily seen it, but I'm basing that statement off of the leaked set photos that came out prior to the 60th being released. But yeah, overall, you know, the hosts as a villain, very forgettable. You know, they were very, very, very forgettable. So that's why I'm like this speech that he gives in the after the meteors crash into Titanic. David Tennant's speech in that was good. Doesn't necessarily save the episode. You know, it wasn't that great, being completely honest with you. So let's move on to the next Doctor. So I'm pretty sure when I got around to the next Doctor that it was my first time rewatching it since 2008. You know, I don't necessarily remember if I have rewatched this episode prior to when this, you know, prior to my rewatch early on this year. And I have to say, back then I didn't necessarily like it as a Cyberman story. I thought it wasn't the greatest, but upon rewatch, it's actually not that bad. I really enjoyed it. You know, I really enjoyed the mystery between Jackson Lake and him calling himself the Doctor. I like the Victorian settings. As for the Cybermen, I mean, I can take the Cybermen or I can leave the Cybermen. As a Cyberman episode itself, it's not the greatest, but overall, the whole storyline of it, you know, the Doctor thinking he's meeting a future incarnation of him that doesn't remember him being him, which, you know, kind of sets up the whole Ruth Doctor thing, and I'm just going to stop talking about that now before I get burned to life from the Timeless Child hater fans. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, I liked it. I definitely did like it. Upon rewatch, it's not as bad as people say it is. You know, it's still not as good as the first two of his Christmas specials, David Tennant's Christmas specials, but it is okay. You know, it's definitely higher for me than the Voyage of the Damned. You know, Voyage of the Damned is at the bottom. Then I'd say it's the next Doctor. So that only means we have one more to go, and that is The End of Time, parts 1 and 2, the David Tennant Regeneration Special. Now, The End of Time, parts 1 and 2. I have seen a lot of people flip on this episode. You know, after it wrapped up 13 years ago with The End of Time, part 2, on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, 2010, was, you know, it's something that I have seen, and a lot of people don't like it. They don't like the master plot. They don't like this, that, and the other. For me, after rewatching it, now I have obviously, this is another of David's Christmas specials that I have come back to. Obviously I have. You know, it was the end of my childhood era, essentially. By the time this came out, I was in my final year of primary school. So I was about 12, 13 when this, you know, came out. The finale. Before the Matt Smith era, and it's still good. It's still good. Yes, there are parts of this episode that I don't like, and I'm sure I'd have to rewatch it to point out those, because again, I'm basing this off of memory of when I rewatched this early on this year. I think like April or May was when I last rewatched this. As a regeneration episode, it's comparing it to the regeneration episodes that I've seen. You know, the 10th Planet, Logopolis, the Caves of Androzani, Departing of Ways / Bad Wolf, this, The Time of the Doctor, or The Name of the Doctor, whatever the Doctor it was called. And Twice Upon Time, and The Power of the Doctor. It's not, comparing it to like some of the better regeneration stories, throughout the entire franchise, it's not the best. I will admit that, you know, it's not the best. But I know a lot of fans love this episode as well, because it's, you know, at the time was David Tennant's swan song. You know, they'd done multiple takes of him saying, "I don't want to go," as his final lines. You know, and it basically, I have seen it, like, you know, the Doctor Who Confidential of it, you know, back when that was still a thing, of the different takes, and you do see David getting really emotional, and that's great. You know, the fact that he still loves this show so much that it came back for both the 50th and the 60th, playing a new incarnation of the Doctor. And hell, it even kickstarted what Moffat started with his two Doctors regeneration. You know, David going back in time to see Rose. The first face that face saw, which then correlates to Matt Smith seeing, you know, Karen Gillan, and Capaldi seeing Jenna Coleman prior to regeneration. You know, being the first face those doctors saw. So it is good in that, you know, I was happy in that regard. Now, I remember missing that episode when it came out, the End of Time Part 2. I literally had to watch it on catch up. But obviously, prior to being able to watch that on YouTube, a lot of that stuff got a lot of the spoilery bits got re-uploaded. You know, like the Doctor going back to Rose, you know, Sarah Jane, Mickey, Martha, Jack. All of that got. I remember watching that first on YouTube, prior to actually watching the End of Time Part 2. And as an end to the first era of Russell, you know, now that we're in the second era of Russell, it was, it wrapped up nice. It wrapped up nice and neat to enter into the Moffat era of the show. And yeah, definitely, again, rating it actually compared to the rest of the David Tennant's Christmas specials, you know, lumping parts 1 and 2 as one whole story, the End of Time, I would definitely say it's the third best. A lot of people say it's the actual best. A lot of people would agree with me. A lot of people might say it's lower. To me, how I would rank them is The Runaway Bride is number 1, followed by Christmas Invasion, then The End of Time, then The Next Doctor, and lastly The Voyage of the Damned. Now, a lot of people will disagree with me on that, and that's perfectly fine. And that is going to wrap this up. Thank you all for those who did watch all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I don't know how well this is going to do, but we'll see. We'll see. Because I'm actually filming this all the way at the beginning of May. So, yeah, thank you once again for watching. And hopefully this does well enough for me to incentivize me to do the Moffat era. So, yeah, I shall see you all for the Friday upload.